we're approaching the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the War on Terror. And Afghanistan is now, as we all know, governed by the same rulers as 2001, the Taliban. What is your overall assessment of this conflict, the War on Terror, coming to this day?
Well, it's not very different from what I wrote 20 years ago, and what I'm interested to see finally hit the New York Times this morning. Their correspondent, Alyssa Rubin, who was in Afghanistan at the time, finally wrote what I and a few others were writing at the time and was ridiculed by the New York Times, namely that there were perfectly straightforward ways to deal with the immediate problem, which was Al-Qaeda, without a war, probably with the cooperation of the Taliban, who would have been happy to get rid of her. And as she points out now, 20 years too late, the Taliban were offering to negotiate, and the US responded by saying, she quotes Donald Rumsfeld, Defense Secretary, as saying, "We do not negotiate surrender." Okay, so we want to go in and smash things up. That's who we are. See if she was writing at the time. See if the New York Times was writing at the time. Few people were, and were ridiculed. But yes, that's the assessment. It was perfectly possible to proceed towards a negotiated arrangement. Might have worked, might not have worked. You don't know unless you try. But it was very plausible. And actually, the right answer was given, I think, by a very significant figure in Afghanistan, the leader of the most respected figure in the anti-Taliban Afghan resistance, highly respected figure, Abdul Haq. He wrote at the time, I quoted him, that the reason the United States is invading is in order to show its muscle and intimidate everyone. They don't care about Afghans. They're going to kill a lot of Afghans. They're going to undermine our efforts to overthrow the Taliban from within, but they want to show how tough they are. In other words, as Rumsfeld said, we don't negotiate surrender. We know how to smash things up. We're good at that. Okay, that was 20 years ago. Now, if you think about what's happening now, first of all, the almost instantaneous collapse of the Afghan army was perfectly predictable. I don't say this in hindsight. If you want, I can refer you to an interview a couple of months ago where I was asked what's going to happen. I said, of course, they're going to collapse, just as the Iraqi army collapsed as soon as they saw somebody in a pickup truck running towards them, waving a Kalashnikov. The officers ran away and the troops ran away after them. An imperial power can't construct an army that's going to fight against its own people. Okay? It's a shell army. Half the soldiers weren't even there. The others were hooked on dope. American soldiers who had been involved in training have been saying this for years. They come back very disillusioned. They say they don't care. We knew all along, all of us, that the so-called Afghan army was infiltrated by Taliban, who were there to get their training and to get American equipment. We know this from the simple fact that there were killings of American soldiers by Afghans. Who were they? Taliban infiltrators, of course. We may not like to say it, but the Taliban happen to be Afghans. They live in their villages. They come out when the time is to fight. If American soldiers come, they'll go back to their villages. Then they come back. We also may not like to say this, but who's the legitimate government of Afghanistan? There was a government when we invaded and overthrew it. Now they're back. Who's the legitimate government? A simple question. can't ask it in the rigid ideological framework of Western propaganda, but it doesn't take more than a second to think about it. So getting back to the withdrawal, well, I'll just repeat what I said a couple months ago. I think a precipitous withdrawal, we shouldn't have ever gotten into the war. Remember, first of all, go back a little. We got into the war in 1979 when the US, under Carter and Brzezinski, began supporting the radical Islamists who were later going to take over and tear the country apart, and did it in order to kill Russians. The official statement of the CIA station chief in Islamabad, who was running it. Okay, so we've been in it for 40 years, first with the goal of killing Russians, plenty of Afghans on the side, then with the goal of showing our muscle to show how tough we are and intimidating everyone. Now, when there is a Trump arranged withdrawal, Trump negotiated withdrawal last February, Biden somewhat extended the stay, it was without any concern for Afghans. Look at it. Nobody asked the opinion of Afghans in the villages, in the cities, anywhere. It's not there, but just us, we're tired, so we'll withdraw in a way which may be very harmful to you. It's none of our business. So we should have taken into consideration, not just taken into consideration, given primary consideration to the concerns of Afghans. And I think that would have led to a different kind of withdrawal. Withdrawal was inevitable. I mean, they had pretty much taken over the country. The Afghan army was a shell. The government was a morass of corruption, which very few supported. Obviously, was going to collapse. But so there was nothing. Another year, 5 years of intervention wasn't going to change any of that. So withdrawal was inevitable. It could have been done in a way which allowed reconciliation to take place at the local level, accommodations, arrangements between Afghan groups could have been delayed until October, November. That's important. The fighting season is the summer. In the winter, everybody goes back home. It's too cold. So you can at least have the decency to wait until the fighting season's over, then make it clear that the US forces are going to withdraw, and then maybe some accommodations could be taken place. There were, incidentally, Afghan peace forces, which we couldn't pay any attention to them, but they were there. I've been in touch with them. Good people, thinking about ways of local accommodations, other measures to try to move towards a least worst situation. Could have paid some attention to them. None of this was done. Of course, not by Trump, because he cared about nothing. Also not by Biden. And we now have a situation where it's a little strange what's happening, even on a logistic basis. There's apparently lots of people, thousands, at the Kabul airport who we control, which we can't seem to get out. European countries overwhelmingly have refused to take any refugees. The United States is taking a handful. I mean, it's just across the board, it's just shocking.